Hello and a warm welcome to all. Dear attendees, thank you for registering and joining us for this technology imbibed webinar. We look forward to bringing an insightful session today. I'm Arshna Nair from AI Corespot and I'm honored to be your host for the day. I'm joined by a couple of my colleagues, Arvind Kannan and Naveen, who will assist in ensuring a seamless and glitch-free experience. Our goal is to provide you with an engaging and enriching session that maximizes your learning and participation. Before we begin, let me take a moment to introduce AI CoursePod. We were founded a few years ago with the strong backing of our knowledge and innovation partner InfoVision and our technology partner Digit 7. We strive to facilitate deep discussions on key technology trends across various industries, hosting 4 to 5 insightful discussions, only if not more, each month. At AI CoursePot, we curate knowledge from reliable sources, including industry leaders and subject matter experts. Our content spans digital articles, blogs, videos, podcasts, and newsletters, offering valuable perspectives on evolving tech landscape. Apart from this panel, we also have an exciting lineup of discussions planned for the coming months, focusing on emerging technologies such as AI, ML, AR, VR, digital transformation, personalization, etc. So we encourage you to visit our website, www.aicorespot.io, to stay updated on upcoming sessions. Additionally, follow our social media channels to receive real-time updates on our latest offerings and announcement. Throughout today's discussion, we encourage you to submit your questions via the question and answer key at any time. We'll address as many as possible during the dedicated question and answer segment. Now, turning to today's critical topic, transforming patient care and outcomes with advanced and data analytics. We are honored to be joined by an exceptional panel. Sherif Feribia, SVP of Preclinical Services North America at Veranex, Nitin Agarwal, Director of IT at Inglewood Health, Hari Bala, Chief Technology Officer at GE Healthcare. Guiding this conversation is our moderator, Sri Rama Srinivasan, Business Head of HLM at InfoVision. Here's a very important disclaimer. The insights and opinions shared by the speakers or the moderator are their personal and are not related or associated with any of their organizations. Well, AI and data analytics are not just changing healthcare, are they? They are rewriting the rules. But how? Let's ask our speakers. That said, I'll now hand over the stage to Sri Rama. Over to you, sir.
Good morning, good evening. Welcome to this panel on transforming patient care and outcomes through advanced data analytics together with generative AI. That's the additional concept. And my name is Sri Rama Srinivasan. I've been a business head with HLM, like Archana said, and at InfoVision. I've been in the healthcare technology services delivery space for over 20 years. More important, perhaps, is the panelists whom we have here today. They have been practitioners at the forefront of, getting the benefit of data and analytics and generative AI for many years, and that's how we hope to, get some insights for you on this exciting journey that healthcare is going through. Healthcare is evolving day by day, right? If you see what's happening, there are a number of things that are happening. If you look at it from a provider perspective, a doctor perspective, what used to be a specialist some time ago has evolved into super specialists and hyper specialists. Just take a neurologist, for example. Neurology was a specialization in itself. Today, you have specialists in ophthalmic neurology, just focusing on the eye. You have specialists in brain medicine, focusing just on the brain. Then there are specialists in cardiac neurology. In practically every major organ, there's a specialized neurologist available, right? That's happening at the provider end of the space. On the patient end of the space, however, what's really happening is if somebody is diagnosed with, say, diabetes or blood pressure, they are given from among a standard set of medicines at a standard dosage to start trying out, right? That can change in the future. What can happen is that each patient, actually, the impact of medication on each patient is different. The dosage impact is different. The side effects are different. The interactions with other medications they are having or interactions with the genes of the patient themselves are different in each case. That's where, personalized data-driven care has a big role to play. And that's an area where we are trying to go towards in this discussion today. And if you see integration of advanced data analytics and AI can truly transform patient care. And not only transform patient care, it can also streamline processes and reduce inefficiencies in, with the ultimate goal being personalized data-driven care. That is the goal. But how do we really use the power of technologies while providing an ethical and responsible implementation background? Yeah, these are some of the aspects we're going to discuss today, and our esteemed speakers, will focus on how data and AI have the potential to enhance clinical decisions, enhance predictive models, and so forth, right? So without taking too much from on the introductory theme, I would like to start with a request to each of the panelists here to first introduce themselves, and then we'll get launched in a discussion and question answer mode. Sherry, may I request you to provide a brief introduction of yourself and your background?
Yes, so thank you for the overall introduction of the panel. My name is Sherry Ferrugia. I'm a Senior Vice President at Veranex here in North America. We are an international company, and we are focusing on medical device commercialization, everything from concept all the way through to FDA approval, commercialization, and assistance with the clinical trials. My background is primarily, what we used to call health IT, and then it was digital health. And I became interested in medical devices when it's an entirely new stream of data, as you know, that's collected with sensors and even some implanted data. And that's what really pushed me over to the medical device side, is the convergence of those two. So thank you for having me on the panel today.
Thank you, Sherry. Hari, may I request you to introduce yourself?
So very nice meeting you all, and thanks for having me on the panel. I am Hari Bala. I am the Chief Technology Officer at GE Healthcare. Prior to joining GE Healthcare, I was running the health analytics and health AI for Oracle Sona. And prior to that, I built and led the AI organization in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Division. Prior to that, I was in Microsoft for 19 years in various divisions. And yeah, that's about me, and looking forward to an engaging chat today.
Thank you, Hari. And Nitin, may I request you to introduce
Sure. So Nitin Agarwal, Director of IT here at Inglewood Health. Pretty much under my catalog, I have a number of different applications that fall under me. So I manage our entire ERP catalog, disaster recovery, all of our digital transformation and generative AI items fall completely under me. I also manage a number of Epic applications. Overall, I've been in the healthcare space for going on about 13 to 15 years or so now. Pretty much for a very long time, and I found healthcare to be the best place for me because in some ways I see it as my small contribution to making a greater change in the world, the same way as my very esteemed fellow panelists have been doing in their respective spaces. So I'm looking forward to a very engaging conversation, and thank you so much for having me as part of this.
Thank you to all three panelists, and let's get started on this discussion with the ABC of this topic. I'll direct a question to Sherry first. How can data and analytics and potentially generative AI be used to improve healthcare outcomes? The broad paint brush on this. Sherry? Oh, Sherry, you're on mute, I believe. I think you're on mute, Sherry.
I am. I hit the button and I thought it took, but it didn't. I apologize for that. So certainly looking forward to hearing from my esteemed colleagues on this as well. But, when we think about big data analytics and healthcare, we focus on how it can enable personalized medicine. This goes back to something you said earlier is, it's the super specialist, right? So how can we enable personalized medicine and identify, optimal patient-specific treatments? That's really where we want to go, because hypertension is not hypertension, depending on, multiple factors with the patient. doing this analytics can really influence the improvement of life standards for our patients as well. You talked about efficiency. It can result in reducing waste in healthcare resources, and this is human resources as well. And ultimately, we hope that we'll have a positive financial outcome as well as a clinical outcome, looking at the convergence of the two. Analyzing the data isn't just medical records, right? It's looking at, going way back into history. It's looking at, family history as well. What treatment outcomes have worked, what haven't worked. And really the ultimate goal is to provide the healthcare professional and the patient with the opportunity to tailor treatments to the specific need at the time. So time sensitive, relevant, specific interventions that can lead to a more personalized approach. And ultimately, we've talked a lot recently about patient satisfaction, the patient experience. And I've even heard some hospital CEOs say, if you think about if we can deliver care and everyone is equal on the delivery care spectrum, what's really going to make the difference? What's going to make the difference is patient satisfaction and patient experience. So how can we use data analytics? And we believe that we can to improve that patient experience as well.
Sherry, it's not only the treatment, but also the impact on side effects and interactions, all of which
Yes.
could
and that ultimate patient experience.
Patient experience, totality of the patient experience. Okay, thank you for that, Sherry. I'll move on to Nitin with a question. In your hospital, how has generative AI impacted the hospital's own workflows, if any? And do you see it's been more beneficial, or it is saddled you with more challenges?
That is a wonderful question. So the way I'm going to start answering that is I'm going to start with the second part of your question first, right? So everyone on this call, you're either working in healthcare, you work with hospital systems, you're doing something in the space. So Gen AI, generative AI, something like that is the newest buzzword, right? So everyone is throwing that in for any product that they're launching. The first thing it's going to say is, we utilize generative AI to give you the best results. We use generative AI to make sure you're saving money. So in my opinion, and what I've seen as the leader on the Gen AI side for Inglewood, Gen AI has a wonderful place in healthcare. It is a very impactful piece of software. It is a very impactful change that is coming. But while it gets here, there's a lot of different things that you have to sift through, right? So from that perspective, I think that has been one of the challenges with generative AI, because there's so many different companies. It's like drinking out of a fire hose, right? So it's a million vendors that are reaching out to you to say, hey, we can do this better than anyone else because we have Gen AI. But when you dig in a little bit deeper, you realize the Gen AI is a base layer, right? It's something that maybe it's a decision tree, or it's something that's very base level. It doesn't actually dig into what's needed. So here at Inglewood, we are very, very specific about the Gen AI capabilities that we take on. And just an example of some of the ways that we've made a very noticeable change using Gen AI is we've recently launched a texting platform, or a texting campaign, where we are reaching out to over 1.2 million patients that we are texting constantly. So we're giving them all their reminders for all of their upcoming appointments. We're letting them know they're able to check into their appointment on their phones. They're able to confirm it, reschedule it, make any changes necessary. But in addition, we have certain generative AI functions that we've enabled that can help identify high at-risk patients, right? Patients that have been into our hospital for certain conditions, certain things that they've been seen for, certain medications that they're getting. And it allows us to run a campaign to say, hey, you may be at risk for X, Y, and Z. Come on in, come to our hospital. Let us help you figure out if you need that care before you ever need that care. And I think that is one of the greatest accomplishments that any hospital can do, because what you're doing when you do that is you're making sure your patient is taken care of before they ever need to come in and see you for it. You're preempting everything that could happen. You might be on mute, Jerome.
My turn. Anyway, thank you for that. And very interesting take. I wish that starts happening more and more, that the hospital reaches out before we need to, or the provider reaches out before the patient needs to reach out. If that happens, it'll be a good thing. I mean, usually the patient has to wait for 3 or 4 weeks to get an appointment, right? So
Exactly.
whole...
And we're even doing something called Fast Pass that allows patients, if they need to come in for a certain kind of appointment, they're able to get the next available visit. So our patients are not sitting online for weeks at a time, months at a time. We're able to offer those patients the spots that become available. And what that does is not only is the patient being seen faster, but you're increasing your overall revenue for the hospital, because now you have no bench time, you have no wasted time. Any blocks that are available, we fill with patients.
Very interesting. Maximizing revenue potential as well. Okay. How's and this question is, thank you, Nitin. And this question is directed to Hari, actually. How's generative AI, Hari, transforming healthcare data management and analytics? First, basic question, and then we'll go into deeper, higher levels of discussion.
So yeah, I can jump in, right, based on my experience. And it's so like, if I have to rewind back, so when I started building the AI organization for Oracle Cloud, we were building like generic AI services to solve problems, right? Like speech, computer vision, natural language processing, and decisions AI, right? When the Gen AI came, it completely transformed. One of the biggest things when we did the Cerner acquisition in Oracle is Cerner was sitting on like a $500 million contract with Nuance for speech to text, and then like summarization, automated transcription, and summarization. So one of the things that I did is, right, like, hey, my org did all the hard work on building the speech to text servers. Now, how do you combine the speech to text and use automated transcription to reduce the manual workload on documentation? Like, as most of you know, most of the times doctors and nurses spend in hospitals is taking notes, right? So how do we do an automated transcription and use Gen AI to do a summarization, completely reduce the manual workload of doctors and nurses spending on automated transcription, right? Like, so that evolved as, if you go and look at the internet, we came up with something called as clinical digital assistant, and now it's called as clinical digital AI. And got a lot of praises from doctors and nurses saying, like, thanking us that they have time to have lunch now, right? So now in the 30 minutes of time that they have to see a patient, now they can go and like spend that full 30 minutes seeing the patient versus taking notes, seeing only for 10 minutes and 20 minutes on notes taking. And there are a lot of other areas where this is evolving, right? So as you all know, to develop an AI model, you need to have a lot of data, but using customer data has a lot of challenges, especially with HIPAA, GDPR, and things. So we can completely use Gen AI to create synthetic data generation, and then like use that synthetic data to train the models. And then it can completely go and use, there's a data vault from MIT, which completely goes and de-identifies patient-specific information based on safe harbor laws and gives you a data that you can use to train the base model. And then like, obviously you can fine tune it once you get the actual customer data. And there are a lot of other cases on imaging, for example, right? Like GE Healthcare is pretty big on all this MRI and ultrasound and imaging part of it. And we are infusing a lot of AI to do complete diagnostics of imaging, right? Like, so use AI to completely transcribe and give diagnostics, so you don't even need to look at the imaging to go and understand. And one of the things that we are working on is on the agentic AI side of things, right? How can we go about using various agents for various use cases? I don't want to deep dive now, but if a further question comes, I can talk more on it. On specific models, say, for example, Hopper is extremely good at radiology imaging, right? So it has gone through like plethora of radiology images to go about like coming up with decisions that is a lot better than even a radiologist, junior radiologist in the hospital would do, because it has seen all patterns, right? Pro-C, for example, is very good on X-rays. So there are a lot of specific agents that are doing specific jobs, and that evolution is just like mind-boggling. So I will stop there because I don't want to completely take over this conversation. This is a passionate topic for me.
In fact, this topic needs to be delved into perhaps a little bit later. But I'm told that the AI agentic options for imaging are getting to be more efficient than the human counterparts, far more efficient, in diagnosing, or at least making sure that you weed out most of the candidates, right? I mean, those who are okay, normal patients can be told that they're fine earlier and faster than waiting for a human to diagnose, right? Hari?
Yes, right. Like, so weeding out and then like also detection, right? Like things around even eliminating the need of a care manager, for example, right? Like, so the person who's sitting in between doctors and the patients, one of the things that we did is completely go about like automate that entire patient outreach using longitudinal record. And since we have that information, we don't need to even have a care manager, right? Like we use them as a human in the loop at the end of it. So we don't need like hundreds of care managers to go about doing it. The prediction, it's like, how do I say this, right? Like as long as the data resides and patterns reside, and you can completely use that to use generative AI to go any sort of prediction and automating of any manual tasks.
We should have a separate webinar on generative AI and imaging on that topic itself. Meanwhile, shifting to Sherry. Thanks again, Hari. Shifting to Sherry. Sherry, what are some of the potential challenges you've seen associated with both the data analytics aspect of it and the generative AI?
Well, I don't think we have the time to discuss all the challenges. we've already touched on some of them. Like the quality of the data, integration, privacy, security concerns, data standardization. Oh my gosh, and I can tell you that I'm sure the two gentlemen on the panel with me are much more equipped to talk about data breaches and data anonymization and synthetic data versus de-identified data. What I'd like to really focus on that I have seen has been a real challenge is the lack of skilled analysts. And I think some of it comes down to the confusion between what a data analyst is and a computer scientist is. Most people probably who have dialed in for this know that, data analysts will focus on extracting the insights, really understanding the patterns in the data, which of course, that leads to, predictive analytics, right? Whereas computer scientists focus on more of the design, the development, and the implementation of those computer systems and those softwares. Historically, we have not seen the talent on the data analytics side. We've seen a lack of skilled analysts. We know that there's a shortage in healthcare workers in general, and that these data analysts are coming out of places like Georgia Tech, where I spent 13 years, and they're going to work for Google. They're going to work for GE. They're going to work for Microsoft. They're not necessarily going into the healthcare setting. And so that leaves a big gap in the actual healthcare setting. How are we analyzing these complex data sets to really get the most of the data? And that, of course, leads to looking at infrastructure and scalability, which are also challenges. A lot of, especially rural hospitals, these smaller hospitals, do not have the funds to invest in the infrastructure and the technology to even support data analytics, much less to be able to recruit data analysts. So that's, again, that's probably a little bit of a different take on what some of the challenges are that we normally think about, with unstructured data, self-reported data, data storage, data transfer. But I see that a lot of those things can be solved through policy, some through, again, infrastructure and scalability. But I think that we're going to continue to see a shortage of the lack of skilled workers.
Thank you, Sherry. In fact, you talked about a lot of the technical challenges. We have not even gone into areas like responsible and ethical implementation and all, right? That's going to be a secondary challenge. There's one more question I want to ask by you. Resistance to data-driven decision making. Is that a big part of what you face, data-driven decision-making practices? Do you see resistance in your organization? Mute, Sherry.
I didn't realize that question's for me. If you don't mind, if you could repeat the question.
Oh, I was asking. I was asking one more question to you. Do you face resistance to data-driven decision-making processes in your organization? And if so, what are some of your thoughts on that? How to overcome?
I mean, I think that, anytime there's change, there's going to be resistance, right? So if we're looking at, I think that it's less about how we're collecting the data and how we're using the data, if that's the actual question. The resistance typically comes from what I've seen as to how the data is going to be used and the accuracy of the data. Can we trust the data? What is the trusted source? What is the source of truth? And so I think that we're going to continue to see those challenges with how we, again, collect the data, how we integrate the data into the workflow, and then what is the source of truth. And
whether the providers at the end are ready to, trust that data and make a decision, make a clinical decision based on it, right? It's all going to be evolving.
Yeah, I mean, and I can tell you that, and others can comment that I've heard providers that are hesitant to accept the data and to make a clinical decision based upon the data, because it puts them at risk from a legal perspective. So I look at it that it's a hybrid approach. The data should be used to support the clinicians. It shouldn't be the single source of truth. It has to be hybrid. We're just not to the point yet to where the data can be the single source of truth.
Yes, there has to be a human aspect, and which is supported
does have
by
to be aspect.
And Hari, thank you, Sherry. My next question is to Hari. You are a technologist as well, substantially, right? So integrating cloud and AI solutions, what are some of the challenges you face when integrating AI and cloud solutions?
So it's a really good question, right? So the biggest challenge is, like, as I'm working through some of these modernization, hospitals still don't believe in cloud, right? So because of security and compliance and the HIPAA in US, GDPR in Europe, the data sovereignty and security is something that they don't believe in, even though, so I come from Azure, and Oracle Cloud is what majority of the time I've spent on, where we used to have like Fed customers, top secret customers, and we know how to store data in a much secure way, how we can do a ephemeral training and not even touch the data using like secret vault. And there are a lot more efficient ways that you can do it on cloud in a much secure way. But for example, one of the biggest hospitals that I visited in Istanbul, it's a 7-star hospital at what it looked like. AR, VR, not even touched the elevator. And they had a huge data center, right? Completely in a hospital. It didn't look like a hospital to me. It's Acıbadem in Istanbul, like huge fancy hospital, but they had their own data center, and they had a failover data center in a different city in Turkey. I felt like I'm going to some Azure data center or Oracle data center, right? The reason they do that is they don't want any of the data to leak their premise, and they want to control the data. One, for GDPR. The other part is around they don't want to leak any information. Like, whatever sudden there has been data breaches, right? Like there was one data breach on data records completely getting out, right? If you do it, we have to do it right. So they don't want to take a risk, and as a result, they're still on-prem customers, right? And they have, like, one of the products that I'm responsible for is called as Command Center. It's like wall of analytics, right? So they completely power it in-house, and they have their own data center. So that means, like, trust of customers on security and compliance is one of the key pieces. The second piece is cost of ownership, right? So if you have to move from on-prem or a hosted solution to a cloud solution, now comes the second part on for you to go and enable it in a very cost-effective way. That means you need to go to a multi-tenant solution. So there are a lot of better ways that you can do in multi-tenant, still do tenant isolation and then have security. But customers don't believe in multi-tenancy, even though we have explained, right? Like North American, it's not that difficult, but when you go outside of North America, it becomes extremely difficult. So now, if you have to go to single tenant, the cost of ownership will go up, right? So that means what they are used to as a hospital spending money and then now adopting to a cloud-based solution, it comes at a cost, right? So that is another piece. And then this other part around like the data training and all this, having a secure platform to go and do model the de-identification, data lineage, the provenance, and then like tracking of data in a very secure way all through the system. And then like, how do we do it in a very efficient way when it comes to AI, infusing AI, right? Model training and inference stages, right? And that's where it comes, like you need to have a lot of education. And as a result, for clinicians and doctors, they don't, if you go and try to explain them all these things on how we would go do this use control plane and then data plane and where the data is going to be trained and how I'm going to store it in a very secure model going to be stored and how I'm going to do it on the inference, it's overwhelming for them, right? So I would say while we can do all these things and while we have solved for multiple customers, when it comes to hospitals adopting cloud solutions, they are like cost of ownership, security, and the way to explain them, because they also have in-house CTOs and the security folks inside the hospitals. And it's a long discussion, right? Like we need to explain to them multi-tenancy is okay, right? So on the cost pieces play into all these using of compute and storage. And also when you go into AI, like, do I need to use an LLM or an SLM? Or do I need to use a rule space? For them, they don't care, right? Like I don't need like fancy models and then like you are go hitting GPUs and then spiking the cost high like crazy. And then they're going to come and say, like, hey, do I even need this, right? So now you need to be very business focused on, is it solving the problem or am I doing it for proving that I have a fantastic model on earth? So I'll leave it at there. And if you have any double clicking that you want to do, I would be more than happy to answer. Yeah.
Maybe we'll come back to that. I wanted to ask a more a clinical question to Hari. Usage of generative AI, do you have any, can you share any success stories of how it has improved patient care or improved operational efficiencies? Nathan?
Yeah, so I touch base.
Actually, I was directing that to Nathan. I'm sorry if I misspoke. But since you have, please finish your thought and then we'll move on to. Yeah. Hari?
No, Hari, I'm very interested in your
No,
thoughts as well.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
right? Like there have been multiple use cases on generative AI, right? Like, so honestly, it was like when we were building AI, we were trying to find that the round keg in a round pole that I wanted to put, right? And then like when Cerner acquisition happened, I was super happy because there were so many cases where we were able to use some of those AI solutions and Gen AI solutions to go about solving the real use case problems, right? And this is where what I spoke about on the cost and do customers buy it, right? You need to put in their shoes, and especially hospitals when they are not sitting on like a lot of money, why would they go about doing it? That means you need to save costs for them, or you need to be like some insane business benefit that they will be able to make money off it, or you need to reduce that, say, for example, insurance cost or costs that they're going to do. Once you start thinking from their perspective, then you solve problems, right? Like, so the clinical digital assistant or clinical digital AI that came out of my organ Oracle was predominantly around that particular piece on, hey, I'm spending 500 million to no one's anyway, Cerner. Now Cerner is part of Oracle. Like, how can I save that money? Money saved is money won. So now we are also going to make that models better on doing the speech to text and generative AI based summarization and completely reduce the cost. Now it's saving costs for doctors. Now, if you're going to save costs, they're going to see like extra patients and then like can focus on patients and their own health, right? Many doctors and nurses retire at a very early age because they get like fatigued with all this manual notes taking and whatever. This documentation is the overhead, right? So eliminate that need. So now doctors are happy, nurses are happy, they're able to see more patients, and then the hospitals are happy because now they're going to get like a lot more patients than what they're used to. So that really helped. very, very
You
productive
covered,
use case.
very good, Hari. You covered the operational efficiency part of my question. How about patient care? That is excellent coverage. There are two parts to my question.
Patient
I'll
care
move
part.
to the patient care. Yeah.
Do you want me to talk
I'll
like our?
Maybe I'll come back to you if you don't mind, Hari. Let me ask the patient care question to Nitin, and then I can come back to you. Or Nitin,
Sure.
feel free to go into more operational efficiency benefits of generative AI either. No, that's also fine. Then we'll go back to Hari.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So actually, I want to tag on to exactly what Hari was talking about, right? Because we are also working with an application right now that we provided to our providers where it'll be a Gen AI approach where it'll listen to the conversation that the provider is having with the patient. It'll summarize it for them in a note. So now the key things that happens, right? One, that patient has more trust in the provider because the provider is not sitting there completely hunched over their computer trying to notate every single word that the patient said. So one, that patient is now feeling that the provider is directly and uniquely focused on them, where previously that wasn't the case. For years and years and years that I've been in healthcare, I've heard patients say, my provider is just looking at a computer. I'm not a patient anymore, I'm a number. And that's not the feeling and that's not the emotion we want, right? Because again, our patients, from a very business perspective, right? Our patients are our revenue. At the end of the day, if we don't have good patients, we don't have patients coming in, our patients don't trust us, we have no revenue. But in addition, our patients really, the way we at Inglewood see it is our patients are our family. Because if we don't take care of them the best way that we can, what's the point of doing what we're doing? So now providers are able to uniquely give the patient the attention. Providers don't also have a massive amount of pajama time. Providers are not spending their time in the evenings or on the weekends trying to catch up on notes. You don't have nurses with the little scribble down that they have in their pockets. Any nurses on this call will be very familiar with that. I know you guys still probably have a bunch of notes that you've written on little scraps of paper in your little scrub pockets that you pull out later, and you're trying to document everything that you did. That goes away now. So what AI is letting us do is it's taking a cross between what, for example, Nuance and Dragon was doing, where it's, hey, I'm going to just notate everything that was said in this call. I'll give you a transcript and you figure out what you want to do with it. And a provider sitting there and manually entering everything, right? So it's almost this hyper enhanced version now where the provider can have a very natural conversation with the patient. They can focus on the clinical care. The patient can focus on the provider, and the system will generate that note for them. And not only that, one of the other greatest things that we heard from providers is there are so many notes here. How am I supposed to know what's actually going on with my patient? So one of the other programs that we're piloting with Epic right now is where Epic in itself will summarize the last 30 notes. And it'll give the provider a summary of what exactly has occurred at the basis level in those 30 notes. And the provider can dig in deeper if they need to, but it gives them a jumping off point so that they're not spending the first 10 minutes, 15 minutes of that appointment or that encounter trying to figure out why the patient's even there. The provider now has a very quick summary at their fingertips that they can look and say, you know what, this is what Mr. Johnson needs. This is what Mr. Smith needs. Great, I can now go have a conversation with them. So where providers were spending only a few minutes with their patients because they just didn't have the time, now you're freeing up that provider to spend more time on that patient care. Actually listen to what the patient is saying, what the patient is there for, and how we can best help the patient. And I think from that perspective, generative AI has been immensely impactful, both on like operational efficiency and the care that we're providing to our patient.
For the provider as well as the patient. That's the interesting take from this. So it's not disjointed. And Hari, you were adding something on the patient care part?
Patient care part, things that we are working on, right? Like, so using agentic AI, right? So let's take a scenario, right? Like, so if you're like a prostate cancer patient, right? So there are like 4 ways that a patient would come and exhibit, right? Like coming to a doctor and then saying certain symptoms that they are exhibiting. The immediate next step that will happen is vitals that we will go about taking for that particular patient. And then we'll go into X-ray imaging and then like radiology, MRI, and ultrasound, right? Like, so that's the usual steps that happen in the patient thing, right? But the disease itself, right? Like it will progress if think of it like rows, and if the disease itself, like on the column side, the issue within the prostate, and then like it has like spread across prostate, and it has gone into organs outside of prostate, and then started mutating, right? So now if you think of it like a 4x4 matrix, each of the cell can be an agent on its own, right? And that's the reason I was talking about like the radiology imaging part of it. So there is like one of the best models out there called Hopper, and the latest model is Grace, that has been proven to be the best when it comes to imaging analysis, right? And using that particular agent, we can completely go about doing a much better job on analyzing the disease and eliminating the need of going to radiologists, going back and forth, and do a quick detection of issues to like using like not a federated learning, but a learning across like millions of billions of records of patients of that particular cohort and age group, right? Like kind of think of it like pop health coming into the picture too. If an aged patient is like a 10-year-old patient versus a 90-year-old patient exhibiting that particular symptom there, so we can do a much better job on diagnostic and be more accurate than even a new radiologist in the hospital would do, right? And also the need for radiologists now reduces on every small thing. You don't need to go to a radiologist. You can do that initial diagnostic. And then for X-ray imaging, there is like things like Pro-C and the models that are like a lot better and sophisticated. So use that to do that diagnostic. So you just use those key radiologists in a hospital only for critical situations now. Majority of the things can be taken care of it using agents.
Thank you, Hari.
Yeah.
Next question is to Sherry, but there are two parts to the question because there's an audience question as well, which I think is related to the main question. One is how can analytics be used to improve decision making in healthcare settings, in real practice? And related to that, I see an audience question from Rakesh Diwa. There are quite a few audience questions, but this one is related to that. How can analytics and AI-driven analytics enhance early disease detection while ensuring patient trust and ethical use? So analytics in healthcare settings. Over to you, Sherry.
Yeah, so I mean, we've already discussed, some of this, but it can certainly, improves the decision-making process by providing, deep insights into patient population. So, patient population all the way to, I call it kind of the, the upside down pyramid, right? So patient population drilling into personalized healthcare. But also, in identifying trends, and I'll tell you a story recently with my family. My youngest has long COVID, and we didn't really realize this until we were on a hike, and she had her Apple Watch on, and it was a low impact hike. I mean, my 6-year-old grandson was with us, if that tells you anything about how low impact it was, right? And she didn't feel well, and she's looking at her Apple Watch. It's giving her alerts, and the alert was that your heart rate is over 200, which should not have been. Mine was still in the high 70s, low 80s, right? And she's she's at an ideal weight. She's a swimmer. She's an athlete. There's no reason why that should have happened. We took that trend data for the weekend that was captured on the device, which, kind of goes into, what are some of the emerging trends, right? And we sent that over to her, at the time, her pediatrician, who then sent it to a cardiologist who was like, okay, we think we know what's going on here. Let's get her into the long haul clinic. 15 years ago, we wouldn't have been doing that, right? I mean, they would have been trying to figure out what's going on with her. And now, based upon looking at those trends and some predictive modeling, they were able to give her a diagnosis almost immediately that went along that they were seeing with long COVID. So, it also, so not only is the data analytics, improving the decision making, but we're seeing more rapid diagnosis and more efficient diagnosis. And coupling that with historical data, now there is, a plan for her and for any patient that experiences this as to how to monitor, how to manage, when to come in, what medications. And we were able to use the same medical device, her watch, when they put her on medication to see which one worked best. Normally what happens is you go in and go, yeah, I feel better. Okay. We actually had real data, trending data, as to when she would take the medication, when she wouldn't take the medication, what was going on with her heart. So this is just one example of how looking at data in a patient-specific way can be used to improve healthcare for the patient. But then that's also going to be data that is going to be, of course, learned through, you got machine learning, AI, that's going to be hopefully used to, to help other patients looking at, trends along the way. So long story to say that, again, we've got data analytics is just changing the landscape of everything in healthcare, from predictive analytics to early intervention to personalized treatment to improved diagnosis and interventions overall.
Very good, Sherry. And there's another audience question related to this. It's a great example of how data and AI was used in an actual life, within your family setting type situation. But what are the risks of over-reliance? This is a question from the audience, from Sudhamani. What are the risks of over-reliance on AI in clinical decision-making, and how can they be mitigated? I guess it's more the human decision-making which has to be part of that, but I leave it to you to answer. Yes, Sherry.
So I'll just say a few words, and then I think that my colleagues are probably more equipped at really answering from a technology perspective how AI can have an impact on the clinical decision making process. But one of the things that I have seen is that sometimes AI systems can actually underestimate the risk, and they can miss really important factors for patients. Leading to, just interventions that, that don't work. And that goes back to what I said earlier. It's part of the reason that we want that hybrid approach. Let's use AI, but let's still have the human intervention as well. The other risk of over reliance is bias. And I would love to hear from the two of you as to any examples that you've seen as to where bias through AI has actually impacted possibly a negative patient experience.
Interesting question.
Some of the real challenges and problems, right? Like, so whenever I think of AI, especially when it comes to healthcare, however modern and sophisticated things are getting, I consider that as an assistant, right? Think of it like a driver-assisted, AI-assisted car, or a co-pilot, even like co-pilot to kind of go and, especially when it comes to patient decisions, right? Like, so there are things where you can afford to make a mistake when it comes to operational efficiency, for example. But when it comes to patient decisions, clinical decisions are being made, I absolutely would want to have a human in the loop to make the right decisions, right? And bias is another important part that you touch base, Sherry, right? Like, it's very true, because the cohort that you're dealing with, and is it the right cohort? The AI is all about like the garbage in, garbage out is what I always say, right? If you end up training a model with like a cohort of data that didn't take certain race, for example, or types of people, for example, into account on training the data, then there is that bias automatically when you do on the inference state, right? That's where it becomes extremely critical for you to have this right cohort of the data set and the right data set for you to train the model that you can do use during inference. And it's still, I would say, like it's an art, right? And there are agents that has come to go and do this benchmarking and providing accuracy across the board, right? But still, it's an accuracy, and there's still going to be hallucinations, right?
Mhm.
Even when we automated this entire CAD manager outreach, we still had a human in the loop because you can't completely eliminate the CAD managers, even though we can reduce the time it would take like 4 to 6 weeks to kind of go look at the manual notes and handwritten notes, and then do all those manual workflow to understand the data. Now we can completely use CNLP and use unstructured to structured, and then like use longitudinal record to do an outreach, which reduce the time from multiple weeks to few minutes maybe. But still, that few minutes of some CAD manager or an expert going and reviewing what you're going to go, especially when it comes to decision making, is super critical in my opinion. I will leave it to Nathan if you want to add anything to it.
Absolutely. I would absolutely like to add a little bit to this because this is something that we ran into very recently. So we are working with a pilot program that we're going to launch on our website that's going to basically be for our, our clients, our customers to go on the website, ask their questions, and it's basically going to allow this AI to have an impact, right? And the AI is going to take those questions rather than pushing those over to our contact center and clogging up our staff. We allow the AI model to do it. One of the very big things that I want to point out that Hari said, right, is hallucinations, because that is a very key concept in AI. AI is prone to hallucinations. But another thing that's very important there is what Hari said is how you train your model. The reason this comes up is I've been out there soliciting with a lot of different companies that have piloted these AI programs, and one of the large health systems I spoke with said they basically allowed their AI system to go nuts on their website, grab whatever information off of their website and share that with the patient. And what they realized during the very initial pilot was the AI was giving the patient clinical advice. So for example, patient was asking, hey, I am feeling this kind of symptom. Can I do this? And the AI said, well, you know what? And I'll give you the example that they shared with me. It was a patient that was writing in and saying, hey, my heartbeat is really, really fast. I'm feeling very sweaty and clammy. I'm very dizzy. Do I need to come in and see my physician? Or like, what should I do? And the AI responded, it sounds like you may be having a panic attack. Please go ahead and take an Advil and lay down. That is not okay, right? Because again, any clinician that hears any of the symptoms I just mentioned would tell the patient, call 911 immediately, because most likely you're having a cardiac event. There is some kind of cardiac issue that's happening. You need to go ahead and make sure you are okay. The AI should not have been able to do that. What that comes down to is something called decision trees and the guardrails that you put around your AI, right? You limit the information your AI can share. You set up your trees to say, if these kinds of questions are asked, please make sure you navigate to the human in the loop, because there always, always, always needs to be a human in the loop. And anytime an AI product is used or implemented, there needs to be robust testing. So whenever me and my team implement any of our AI products, we spend anywhere between 1 to 3 weeks throwing every type of question, every type of scenario that we can think of. We bring in a number of our nurses to test this. We open it up to a number of our trusted resources that can test this. And we tell them, try to break it. Ask it questions that you don't expect it to answer, because we want to make sure it won't. And I think that's what it comes down to, right? It's very, very, very easy to say, you know what, this is a smart system, it's a computer, it's going to do it all for me. Let me just rely on this. But until AI is smart enough to make its own actual decisions, which Skynet, I hope we never get to, let's be honest here. But until then, there always needs to be a human in the loop. There always needs to be guardrails. There's always needs to be precautions against those hallucinations, because those hallucinations can cause impacts down the line.
Thank you, Nitin. And one more audience question. Very brief answer I want from you on this, 30 seconds maybe. This question is from Carol Crowther. If AI could solve one major challenge in healthcare today, as a part of a hospital, I'm asking you this question. What would you want it to tackle first off the bat? Like, I'm thinking it's a notes problem, but it could be something else. Text to notes. Oh, text to speech to text.
So I think AI is doing. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize what the question was for. I apologize.
No, go for it.
If there's one major challenge in healthcare today, what would you want it to tackle first?
So I think the speech to text is something that AI is tackling effectively, right? I think there is AI that both Hari mentioned, both I mentioned. There's a number of vendors out there, Abridge, Suki, Nuance, DAX, Copilot, Oracle, that are doing something like that. That they have a big place in the market, and it's effective. It is doing what it needs to do. We're decreasing pajama time anywhere between 2 to 5 minutes per provider. So if you count that across multiple patients in a regular days of visit, you're adding in a number of patients to your schedule now over a 1 week, a 1 month, or a 1 year period. So not only are you increasing your overall revenue, but again, you're making that provider more effective. In my opinion, one of the major things that AI can solve today is in documents, right? So for example, there is, in the hospital setting, there is an influx of documents. Patients bring in their previous medical records, they bring in their scanned images, they bring in, my medications, here's what I'm taking, here's my past history. What I would love to see is AI that can look through that document, figure out exactly what's noted in that document, and have that as an option in the patient's chart for the provider to then review and accept. Because that would immediately take such a big impact off of the provider's bench time, where they're just sitting in front of a computer, a nurse that's just sitting in front of a computer trying to pull all this information in. If an AI can do it and do it effectively, where they're reading the patient's vitals, they're reading the patient's history, they're reading the patient's concerns, any medications that they're taking, and it's able to interface with your system and add that as an option for the provider to confirm and choose, not automatically, but for the provider to manually say, yes, this is correct, yes, this is correct, yes, I've confirmed, I think that would be phenomenal.
Would you call it summarization through AI? I mean, is that what it is?
Summarization through AI, I would say, but specifically for documents and images.
Very good. That would be very
Well, summarization and all those things, it's like a very valid point, right? It's super duper critical on saving doctors time to go see the patients. But the place that is absolutely no doubt at all, like on improvements that need to be made for sure. But the place that this can play a much bigger role is like shift lifting the problem on AI, predicting some of the issues that is going to come and stopping it from happening, right? Like say the part that I want AI to play a role is, right, like, hey, there's like cohort of information that is out there. One of the things that we were trying to tackle, VA was one of our customers. Suicide risk prevention was one of the key pieces that we were working on, right? Because we know a set of actions will and medicines that they're taking would lead to a suicide risk, right? So we can use AI to predict that is going to happen and stop that from happening. You're saving patient lives, right? Fall deaths is one of the biggest problem, right? Like prevent issues from happening through computer vision models is what we were using, but it's not like, but it's still a problem in old age homes, right? And then arrhythmia conditions, right? We have cancer detection and prostate cancer that I was talking about. If we can predict using patterns and also like using learning, federated learning across various cohorts that is treatments that has happened across various regions, right? Maybe they are like more advanced in Japan than here or India than the US. Like how can you cross learn and do the prediction a lot before and scenario happened, especially during COVID, it was extremely critical because there are like so many innovations happening at the same time, but we were left out. Sometimes we were left out on things that are happening in other side of the world. So how can you infuse AI to prevent major issues from even happening, and then getting the need for them to go to hospitals would be is what I would say is a big thing for me.
So from your answer,
Yeah.
yes, deduce that there is no one major challenge. There are so many major challenges which can be solved using AI, right? So we can't limit it to one.
So
Sherry,
I'd like to
something?
add on to that because if you think about, predictive analytics versus forecasting, I think of it as like a short-term forecast. I would love to see a time where you have a wearable on and it's like based upon the data that we've been tracking, you are at risk for a heart attack in the next 10 days. I'm not showing any signs right now. I feel great. So, it's that, and, is it always going to be correct? No, but I'd rather go in and have it seen. So, that almost that rapid short-term forecasting, which is quicker than just the predictive analytics, right? Or even the prescriptive analytics. So I think that's where AI in the future, I think that's where we will go. And I think that's where we'll really start to see lives saved at that point.
That's a wonderful three phrases on, that's where AI is, it's where it's going to be, and that's where we're going to go. And that kind of brings us to an end of the time as well. So I would request each of you, maybe we can start with Nitin, Hari, and then Sherry, to provide your concluding remarks on how analytics and generative AI can transform healthcare, can transform patient care, can transform personalized, data-driven care for each patient. Let's have a 1 or 2 minute conclusion from each of you, and then we'll wind up.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Shirama. So the way I would like to conclude this is, as you guys have heard me say, AI is very, very powerful. I genuinely see AI as the turning point in the way healthcare will be done go forward. I would go so far as to compare AI to some of our biggest medical breakthroughs, like actually discovering insulin that can help patients manage their care because AI is so impactful. With that being said, I think AI needs those guardrails, right? AI cannot be left untamed. It cannot be left to run wild because that's when you end up in a situation where you created a monster rather than a hero. I think it goes back to the very, very old saying, right? You either live long enough to see yourself be the villain or you play the hero and you get to a good place. And I think that's what it comes down to because there is a lot of people in the world that think AI is unfallible, right? AI will do everything, AI can do everything, and AI can make no mistakes. But that is not the case, my friends. AI needs to have those guardrails in place. AI needs that human element to make sure that the way it processes and the way it grows and the way it develops is very structured, it's very controlled, and it's given the space to still flourish. I compare AI to a child that's hitting adolescence right now. We are in its adolescence phase, being very honest. And the only thing that we can do is every single one of us that uses AI in healthcare, we can help it grow into an adult that's going to be a productive member of society, that's going to make sure that it has the right impact, that it helps our society grow, and it completely changes our healthcare landscape.
Thank you, Nitin. Hari, just 60 seconds, if you don't mind.
Absolutely, right? So I think Nitin covered it extremely well, right? I personally believe it's going to be super duper helpful on multiple aspects. With respect to all the mundane tasks that's being done, we can completely eliminate it. Now, when I say completely eliminate it, maximum number of all this documentation overload to any operational efficiency needs, scheduling like doctors and nurses, and that is the biggest problems, as you know. And then like operational efficiency within the hospitals, right? Like the moment of bed, length of day reduction, and the whole 9 yards that goes into A not talking to B or B not talking to C within hospital systems with finite number of beds that is there, but how many doctors, nurses, MRI, and so many moving parts, completely automate using AI, right? The second piece is the prediction, which is like the most important piece, right? Like if you can prevent patients from coming to hospitals, a lot of issues will go away, right? Like to Sherry's point around having devices, right? iRhythm is one of the companies that is like doing an extremely good job on preventing arrhythmias, right? There are ways where you can go and have devices that can go and monitor heart conditions and notify you or do a phenomenal job on prediction and then stopping issues from even happening, right? So that is more on the prediction, and then diagnostic and patient safety is one of the key pieces. I'll stop there.
Thank you. And Sherry?
I think the pros have been said. I mean, I do think that, AI is close to being the holy grail. Real holy grail is seamless interoperability, but that's another panel discussion and one that's never fun. The only thing that I would caution, one of the things I would caution about with AI is the possible over-reliance. And I'll end with that is that, we've seen it reduce critical thinking and judgment. And so as long as we just keep those thoughts in the forefront, then I think that it's going to be, like you said, it's going to be one of the greatest breakthroughs that history will show that the impact that AI has on healthcare is right there with a cure for cancer, and it may actually lead to that.
And underlying AI, of course, is the data analytics, advanced data analytics, all through time, right? I mean, that was the core of the topic, and then AI sits on top of that. Do you see AI and data analytics ever getting separated out, or they need to go together, Sherry? You're on mute.
I mean, I do think they go together. I mean, I'm not the highly technical person on this panel to say, should they be separated? I think that it's like a symphony. I'm not sure that one works without the other, right? So that would be the best way that I would describe it in a non-technical way. So,
Hari,
does
in a
that,
quick
does
technical
that make
sense?
sense?
Symphony, right? Like, so the analytics is I would say, like a bigger piece. Like one of the products that in Cerner we own is called healthy analytics, right? So that is like, you do like through various pieces on analyzing, dicing the information, right? And presenting it or to make sense of it. And then there are cases where you can apply AI on top of it, right? Like, so you don't need AI on every single piece of it, but there are special cases where you can infuse AI, which can be a rules-based or a statistical machine learning or deep learning, or like all the way up to LLMs and agentic AI, right? So, but there are a lot of other things that can happen with which is like pure analytics, right? Say, for example, I mentioned one of the products that I'm responsible for now is all about real-time analytics, right? And like what Sherry touched base is a very interesting piece, right? Because the plethora of data that comes through from EMRs, HL7, non-HL7 feeds, and fire interoperability is like massive in the hospitals, right? And one hospital is not the same as another. Even EMRs, one is like Cerner, Epic, and Meditech, and that is like insane because hospitals are done in very, very different way. And then getting that information and analyzing it itself is an art in itself. And then AI just sits on cases where you need to make, like say, for example, estimated discharge is one of the things that we are working on. There you can apply AI, right? And the conversational agent to go and have, I go and admit a patient in a department, right? So then you pick the use cases where you can infuse AI, and then you figure out like whether it should be rules based. That's where cost comes in, right? Now, do I go and use an LLM, or do I use just a rules based, or do I use a statistical based, right? Then you swing from left to right, and then because if you do like LLM, then you're talking about real-time inference and then hitting GPUs, and then the cost spikes up like crazy on a
Thanks,
chatbot use case. I'll leave it at that. Sorry.
Okay. Just the last 30 seconds from Nitin, and we'll.
Sure, I would absolutely parrot exactly what Sherry said, right? AI and analytics together create a symphony. So the same way you wouldn't go through a Bach performance and expect a piano and a guitar, right? I say it the same way. You would want to hear a violin and a piano play together because they make beautiful music together. If you take AI away from the analytics, what is the point? What are you doing with your analytics, right? The entire point of analytics is there's so much data. It's like drinking out of the world's biggest fire hose. You can get as much data as you want, but if you don't have a way for that data to make sense in a quick and easy to understand way, What's the point of that data? That's what AI does for you. It takes that data, it puts it into tables for you, and it makes it something that you can pick up very quickly, understand what it's saying, and make actionable findings from that data. You can take your action right away rather than having a massive lag time.
So thank you, Sherry, Hari, and Nitin. Very insightful discussion. And of course, so many threads and thoughts and ideas have been exposed in this session that's hard to bring together a single conclusion. Instead of trying to conclude, I'll try to say what a few points which nibbles of information, which particularly I found interesting. One was what Nitin talked about, reaching the patient and asking them to come over before the patient knows that he needs to, or she knows that he needs to come to the hospital. It was a very interesting. I hope that happens more and more often. Then, the benefit will be much more potentially to the patient. And then the speech to text discussion from Hari, on how he had enabled providing more lunchtime for doctors, right? I mean, that's a very important thing. And it's not only lunchtime for the doctors, it also means that the patient has a more care time with the provider, right? And then the insight from Sherry that there are not enough analysts in this space available for healthcare companies, and they're all going to technology companies. So we need to find a way that attracts the usage of technology more than the building of technology. I think there's too much brains going into the building part of the technology rather than the usage. So many insights, many more going forward as well. But let's all, I think we're all agreed on one point, that AI, secondary to data analytics, they're all here to play a role permanently. Advanced data analytics is a very important contribution to healthcare, to personalized data-driven patient care. And similarly, AI has its own role as well. So thank you all. Thank you, Sherry, Hari, and
thank you to the audience as well.
Yeah. Thanks to the audience. Thanks to the organizers.
Thank you.
Archana, did you want to say something?
Yes, as we conclude today's session, we extend our heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed panelists, community partners, and all attendees. Thank you for joining. You made the session truly enriching. Thank you. Goodbye.